The flames roared like a living beast, so hot that the soldiers who carried the prisoners to the fire had already collapsed and died from the heat. No man could survive what burned inside that inferno. No flesh could endure it. No hope could remain alive there. And yet something impossible was happening. The king leaned closer to the opening of the furnace, his heartbeat pounding like war drums in his chest. He had ordered 3 men thrown into the fire, 3 rebels who dared defy his command before the entire empire. But now he counted 4 figures walking calmly inside the flames. Not screaming, not burning, walking, alive. The fire that should have destroyed them danced around their bodies without touching them. Their chains were gone, but their skin remained untouched. And the 4th figure looked unlike any ordinary man. His presence radiated authority, peace, and terrifying glory. Who was standing in the fire with them? Why had the flames lost their power? And how did 3 condemned prisoners become witnesses to one of the greatest miracles in history? This is the unforgettable story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, a story of courage under pressure, faith in the face of death, and the God who walks beside his people in the furnace. The Empire of Babylon stood as the greatest power on earth. Its walls towered over cities like mountains built by human hands. Its armies conquered kingdoms without mercy, and its wealth dazzled the nations. At the center of it all stood King Nebuchadnezzar, a ruler feared across the known world. His victories had convinced him that his power was limitless. Nations bowed before him, kings trembled at his name, and his pride grew stronger with every conquest. But pride has a dangerous way of convincing men they are greater than they truly are. One day, Nebuchadnezzar ordered the construction of a massive golden image on the plain of Dura. The statue rose nearly 90 feet high, glimmering beneath the Babylonian sun like a false god demanding worship. Heralds spread throughout the empire carrying the king's decree. When the sound of music filled the air, every person, regardless of rank or nation, must bow before the image. Anyone who refused would immediately be thrown into a blazing furnace. Fear swept across Babylon because everyone understood the seriousness of the command. This was not simply about loyalty to the king. It was about absolute submission. Among the gathered officials that day stood 3 Hebrew men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Years earlier, Babylon had invaded Jerusalem and taken many Israelites captive. These young men had been brought to Babylon and trained to serve within the king's government. Though they now lived in a foreign empire, their hearts still belonged to the God of Israel. They had already proven themselves wise and trustworthy, earning positions of authority in Babylon. They had influence, security, and comfort. Yet in a single moment, all of it stood at risk. The day of dedication arrived, and thousands gathered before the towering image. Governors, soldiers, judges, nobles, and citizens filled the plain as anticipation hung heavily in the air. Then the instruments sounded. Horns blared. Harps echoed. Music thundered across the crowd. Instantly, people fell to their knees like waves collapsing before a storm. Everyone bowed before the image. Everyone except 3 men. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego remained standing. Their refusal was impossible to miss. Some officials in the crowd noticed immediately. These men had long envied the Hebrews and resented their rise to power in Babylon. Now they finally had an opportunity to destroy them. They hurried to Nebuchadnezzar and accused the 3 men of defying the king's command. Furious, Nebuchadnezzar ordered them brought before him at once. When the Hebrews entered the king's presence, the atmosphere became suffocatingly tense. Nebuchadnezzar gave them one final chance. He demanded to know whether the accusations were true. Then he offered mercy. If they bowed when the music played again, their lives would be spared. But if they refused, they would be thrown instantly into the blazing furnace. Then came the king's challenge, dripping with arrogance. What God will be able to rescue you from my hands? The crowd waited for fear to break them. They expected trembling voices, desperate excuses, or last-minute compromise. Instead, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered with astonishing calm. They declared that they did not need to defend themselves before the king. They said that the God they served was able to deliver them from the furnace and from the king's power. But then they spoke words that revealed the true depth of their faith. Even if he does not, we want you to know, O king, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image you have set up. Their obedience was not based on guaranteed rescue. Their faith was not dependent on comfort or survival. They trusted God whether he saved them or not. That kind of faith terrified empires because it could not be controlled. Nebuchadnezzar's face twisted with rage. Humiliated before his officials, he ordered the furnace heated 7 times hotter than usual. The flames roared with such intensity that the air itself seemed alive. Even standing near it became unbearable. The king commanded his strongest soldiers to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego tightly. Their hands were tied. Their feet were restrained. Still dressed in their robes and garments, they were marched toward the furnace. Every step closer intensified the heat until the soldiers themselves struggled to breathe. Then, with brutal force, the Hebrews were thrown into the inferno. The flames exploded outward with deadly power. The heat was so intense that the soldiers carrying the prisoners were killed instantly. From every human perspective, the story should have ended there. 3 faithful men had chosen obedience, and now they were gone. But heaven was about to interrupt history. Moments later, Nebuchadnezzar suddenly leapt to his feet in shock. His eyes widened as he stared into the furnace. Confusion spread across his face. He turned urgently to his advisors and demanded, "Did we not throw 3 men into the fire?" "Yes, your majesty," they answered. The king pointed toward the furnace, his voice trembling. "Look, I see 4 men walking around in the fire, unbound and unharmed. And the 4th looks like the Son of God." The impossible had happened. Inside the furnace, the 3 Hebrews were not dying, they were walking. The flames that consumed everything else could not consume them. The ropes that bound them had burned away, but their bodies remained untouched. And standing beside them was a mysterious 4th figure, whose presence transformed the furnace from a place of execution into a sanctuary of divine protection. Imagine the sight. Flames swirling like molten rivers around men who should have been reduced to ashes. The roar of the furnace unable to silence the peace surrounding them. The king who believed himself invincible, now staring helplessly at a power far greater than his own. In the very place designed for destruction, God revealed his presence. Nebuchadnezzar moved closer to the furnace opening and shouted, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out." The 3 men stepped out of the fire before the stunned crowd. Officials gathered around them in disbelief. They examined their bodies carefully. Not a hair on their heads was singed. Their robes were untouched. There was not even the smell of smoke upon them. The only thing the fire had destroyed were the ropes that once bound them. In that moment, the pride of Nebuchadnezzar collapsed before the reality of God's power. The king publicly declared that no other god could save in such a way. He honored the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and promoted the 3 Hebrews within the province of Babylon. But the greatest miracle was not simply that they survived the flames. The greatest miracle was that God entered the fire with them. Many people want a God who keeps them away from hardship. But sometimes God reveals his greatest power not by preventing the furnace, but by walking beside his people through it. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego discovered that faith does not always remove the fire immediately. Sometimes faith reveals that you are never alone inside it. Every generation faces its own furnace. Some face persecution. Others battle fear, sickness, betrayal, loss, depression, or impossible pressure. The world constantly demands compromise. It tells people to bow down to fear, popularity, greed, or comfort. Standing for truth can feel dangerous. Obedience to God can feel costly. But this story reminds us that no furnace is hotter than God's power. The fire that threatened to destroy the Hebrews became the stage for one of the greatest revelations of God's presence. What the enemy meant for death became a testimony that shook an empire. And the same God who stood in the furnace still walks with his people today. Maybe you are facing your own fire right now. Maybe the pressure feels unbearable, and you wonder whether God sees your struggle. Remember this story. The flames did not mean God had abandoned them. The furnace became the very place where his presence was revealed most clearly. Sometimes the darkest trials become the places where God proves himself most powerfully. And here is the question every viewer must answer. When the pressure comes, will you bow or will you stand? Because courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is obedience in the middle of fear. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego refused to compromise because they understood something greater than survival. Faithfulness to God matters more than temporary comfort. If this story encouraged you, take a moment right now to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share this message with someone who may be walking through a furnace in their own life. And in the comments, Write these powerful words: God is with me in the fire. Your testimony may encourage someone else who feels alone today. Never forget this truth: the fire may burn around you, but when God walks beside you, the flames cannot destroy what He has chosen to protect.